Pharmaceuticals. My name is Jenny Yu, and I am a toxics reduction engineer with the Hazardous Waste and Toxics Reduction Program based out of the Northwest Regional Office. I have been helping healthcare facilities with pollution prevention and pharmaceutical waste management for most of my 20 years here at the agency. These regulations may seem familiar to some of you and brand new to others. This is a very complicated topic, and we have two very knowledgeable speakers here to clarify some of these new special requirements. First, we have Lauren Smith. Lauren is a hazardous waste compliance inspector out of our Northwest Regional Office. She is our healthcare lead inspector and has been with us for over 5 years. Next, we have Eric McConnell out of our Eastern Regional Office. He is the lead compliance inspector out of Eastern and has been with us for over 4 years and also has over 15 years of experience in the healthcare sector. I will rejoin you later to help answer questions. Again, if you have questions or comments during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A panel as our team will be monitoring this as we go along. And so now, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Thanks, Jenny. Our training today will take about an hour and we'll have 2 breaks. We'll cover who the new rules apply to, how to determine your facility's generator category, management requirements, small quantity generator management options, and we'll have time for some questions, as we already mentioned. As questions come up, please do feel free to type them into the Q&A feature. Our slides are numbered and the regulatory references are provided at the bottom of slides. We may cover a few questions as we switch topics, but the plan, again, is to save most of the questions for the end of the presentation. To start, the special requirements for dangerous waste pharmaceuticals can be found in the Washington Administrative Code, WAC for short. Chapter 173-303, Section 555. We will refer to these special requirements in this presentation as Section 555. Section 555 incorporates the federal rule, referred to as Subpart P, and includes regulation or requirements for management of Washington state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. For those that are familiar with Ecology's interim policy for pharmaceutical waste and the conditional exclusion for state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, both are no longer options for healthcare facilities. Section 555 replaced the interim policy and the conditional exclusion was revised. In revising the conditional exclusion, it is only for controlled substances, legend drugs, and over-the-counter drugs that are state-only dangerous waste and held in the custody of law enforcement agencies within the state. Later in this presentation, we'll discuss options that might be available to healthcare facilities who are managing state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. As we go through this presentation, we define new terminology. Some new terms that will be defined later are dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, which include non-credible dangerous waste pharmaceuticals and potentially credible dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. Other terms are non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste, RCRA permitted facility, also referred to in regulations as designated facility, or for short, TSDF. And finally, reverse distributors. We'll also use some abbreviations. The abbreviation DW will be used for the dangerous waste. The abbreviation AHW will be used for acute hazardous waste. The abbreviation EHW will be used for extremely hazardous waste. And the abbreviation OTC will be used for over-the-counter. Another term we need to talk about is healthcare facility. The special requirements in Section 555 only apply if your facility meets the definition of a healthcare facility. To summarize this definition, a healthcare facility is any person lawfully authorized to provide care of a human or animal or distribute, sell, or dispense pharmaceuticals. The full definition can be found in Section 555, subsection 1. The following are some examples of a healthcare facility: hospitals, including psychiatric hospitals, outpatient and ambulatory surgical centers, urgent care centers, oncology infusion, ambulance services, clinics and physicians' offices, including dental, optical, chiropractic, and dialysis, veterinary facilities such as hospitals, clinics, and mobile vets, animal research facilities, zoos, long-term care facilities, correctional facilities, military installations such as hospitals, clinics, mobile units, and logistics facilities, colleges, universities, and K-12 schools. Under the definition of a healthcare facility, you can also find retail pharmacy, mail order pharmacy, retail stores with over-the-counter and/or prescription medications, board distributors and wholesale third-party logistics, and finally, manufacturing or industrial facilities with an on-site medical clinic. For those that do meet the definition of a healthcare facility, it's important to know there is a sewer prohibition. It went into effect nationwide in August of 2019. The sewer prohibition applies to all healthcare facilities and means that you cannot dispose of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals into a drain that leads to a sewer. This prohibition includes state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. For more details, this sewer prohibition is available in Section 555, subsection 6. We've covered if your facility is a healthcare facility, so now what? In order to determine which rules your facility must follow to manage your waste, there are 4 steps. The steps are: 1, designate all your waste. 2, count all your dangerous waste. 3, determine if Section 555 applies. And 4, determine your facility's generator category. Step 1, designation. Designation is the process of determining if a waste is a dangerous waste and what waste codes apply. You are responsible for designating all of your wastes that your facility generates. The procedures for designating wastes are found in WAC 173-303-070. We will not go into the designation process in depth. What you need to know for this presentation is that there are different types of dangerous wastes, and those wastes have different codes. In healthcare, you may have listed wastes, which have waste codes that start with a P, U, or an F. There are characteristic wastes, such as ignitable, corrosive, reactive, and toxic. Characteristic wastes will have waste codes that start with a D. The final steps in the process include determining if a waste meets our state criteria for persistence, toxicity, solid corrosivity, and PCBs. These wastes have a waste code that starts with a W. Some wastes are considered acutely hazardous waste or extremely hazardous waste. And these wastes are regulated at more stringent levels. In particular, we'll be talking about P-listed acute hazardous waste and WTO1 extremely hazardous waste in this presentation. If designation is new to you, it is an important step, and it can also be one of the more challenging steps. We recommend you visit our website listed on the slide if this is new. Here are some examples of pharmaceutical waste that designate as a dangerous waste. To highlight a few, epinephrine has a P042 waste code. Nicotine can have a P075 waste code. And we have toxic state-only dangerous waste with a WTO2 waste code. These include things such as lidocaine, Tylenol, ibuprofen, and antibiotics. Before we go into step 2 in the process, let's pause and talk about nicotine waste. With the new rules, we adopted EPA's delisting of Food and Drug Administration approved nicotine replacement therapies. Currently, only patches, gums, and lozenges are delisted, meaning they no longer have a P075 listing. Even though they would not be a P-listed waste, these nicotine replacement therapies may still designate as a dangerous waste. Nicotine e-cigarette and vape waste are still P075 dangerous wastes. The nicotine delisting can be found in WAC 173-303-9903. Now that you know which of your wastes designate as a dangerous waste, you must move on to step 2 to count your waste monthly to determine which portion of the regulations apply to your facility. Like I mentioned earlier, some wastes are an acutely hazardous waste or extremely hazardous waste and are regulated more stringently. This applies through something called the Quantity Exclusion Limit, or QEL. A QEL is a threshold, and if you exceed the QEL level, all of your waste becomes more heavily regulated. We have 2 different QELs, a 2.2 pound QEL and a 220 pound QEL. The 2.2 pound QEL is reserved for the acute hazardous wastes and the state-only toxic extremely hazardous wastes. Since these are more hazardous to human health and the environment, we regulate these at a much more stringent level, and examples include P-listed and WTO1 wastes. The 220 pound QEL applies to all other dangerous wastes. This includes all the U-listed, most of the F-listed, and the remainder of state-only criteria waste. Step 3, applicability of Section 555. This step is about knowing which rules your facility follows when managing your pharmaceutical waste. So how does your facility determine if 555 applies? We already covered that you must determine if your facility meets the definition of a healthcare facility. Once you have determined you're a healthcare facility, you must designate and count all your dangerous wastes. This means you must count both dangerous waste pharmaceuticals and non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste. This is different from determining your generator category, so don't skip ahead. If in a calendar month you generate any waste above the QELs listed in step 2, your facility must manage your dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under Section 555. This means that the requirements in 555 are not optional. We'll go over the requirements in 555 later in the presentation. We will also go through a couple of examples shortly to help with this step and step 4, making them more clear. Step 4 is determining your generator category. This step is about determining which requirements your facility must follow when managing your non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste. This step must be done after you've determined if Section 555 applies to the management of your pharmaceuticals. If your facility is subject to 555, you do not count your dangerous waste pharmaceuticals when making your generator category determination. Only count non-pharmaceutical dangerous wastes. This table shows the 3 different generator categories: small, medium, and large. Each category has different thresholds for the different groups of waste. To be a small quantity generator, or SQG, You must generate less than the threshold for all three groups in a calendar month. If you exceed the threshold for a month, your generator category will jump to medium or large quantity generator for each month you exceed that threshold. We will demonstrate how to determine your generator category in upcoming examples. For those that are not familiar with determining your generator category, please see our link on our Dangerous Waste Basics webpage, which will be provided later in our resources at the end of the presentation. We've made it through applicability. We covered the definition of a healthcare facility, that you must designate and count all your wastes. After counting up your wastes in each QEL group, you must determine if your facility must follow Section 555 for managing the pharmaceuticals. Finally, your facility then determines generator category for management of non-pharmaceutical waste. I'll now cover a few examples that will hopefully answer some of your questions. After the examples, we'll go over management requirements in 555. As a reminder, you can type in your questions into the Q&A feature as we go through the slides. Our first example is Beta Hospital. Beta Hospital has already completed step 1 and step 2 for designating and counting all their waste generated throughout the entire hospital. In the past calendar month, Beta Hospital generated the following wastes: 800 pounds of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, 200 pounds of spent solvent from their laboratories, 15 pounds of glutaraldehyde from sterilizing equipment, and 10 pounds of paint waste from their building maintenance. Next, we'll need to take a closer look at their wastes to see if Beta Hospital must use and follow the requirements in Section 555 for management of their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. So we're now on step 3 for determining applicability of Section 555. Let's take a closer look at Beta Hospital's pharmaceutical waste. The 800 pounds of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals include 15 pounds of epinephrine waste with a P042 waste code. Remember, P-listed wastes are considered acutely hazardous waste, AHW, which have a QEL of 2.2 pounds. The 800 pounds also includes 5 pounds of dangerous waste controlled substances, 200 pounds of chemotherapy waste, 80 pounds of federal hazardous waste pharmaceuticals, and 500 pounds of state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. I want to highlight the 15 pounds of P-listed epi waste. Since P-listed waste falls into that 2.2 QEL group, Beta Hospital will need to add this up separately. It cannot be added with the wastes that have a QEL of 220 pounds. Now Beta Hospital will add all the other dangerous wastes that fall into that 220 pound QEL group to get the total of 1,010 pounds of dangerous waste. Because Beta Hospital exceeded the threshold for both QEL groups, Beta Hospital must manage their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under Section 555. To be clear, Beta Hospital would be required to manage their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under Section 555 if they exceeded either of the QEL groups. Next, we'll move on to step 4, determining Beta Hospital's generator category. This is a step where Beta Hospital determines which rules they must follow when managing their non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste. So just to refresh our memories, here's all the waste they generated in a calendar month. 800 pounds of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, 200 pounds of spent solvent, 15 pounds of glutaraldehyde, and 10 pounds of paint waste. Since Beta Hospital must manage their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under 555, they do not count their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals towards their generator category. After deducting their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, they must add the remainder of the waste generated in a calendar month. This total is 225 pounds of other dangerous waste. As we showed in the table on slide 21, Beta Hospital is a medium quantity generator, or MQG, since they generated more than 220 pounds of dangerous waste that month. Beta Hospital must manage their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste under the MQG requirements. Our second example is Alpha Hospital, and they've already completed step 1 and step 2 for designating and counting all of their waste generated throughout the entire hospital. In this past calendar month, Alpha Hospital generated the following: 40 pounds of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, 70 pounds of spent solvent from their laboratories, 15 pounds of glutaraldehyde from sterilizing equipment, and 10 pounds of paint waste from their building maintenance. Now we need to take a closer look at their waste to see if Alpha Hospital must use Section 555 for managing their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. We're now in step 3 for determining applicability of 555. When taking a closer look at Alpha Hospital's pharmaceutical waste, the 40 pounds include 3 pounds of epi waste. Remember, that has a P042 waste code and has a QEL of 2.2 pounds. 5 pounds of dangerous waste controlled substances, and 32 pounds of other dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. Like before, the 3 pounds of P-listed epi waste is added up separately because it falls into the 2.2 pound QEL group. Then Alpha Hospital can add all the other dangerous wastes that fall into the 220 pound QEL group. They get a total of 132 pounds of dangerous waste. Since Alpha Hospital has exceeded the threshold for the 2.2 pound QEL group, they must manage their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under 555. Again, it doesn't matter that all of their other dangerous wastes were below the 220 pound QEL. Since Alpha Hospital exceeded one of those QEL categories, they're required to manage their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under 555. So moving on to step 4, to find out which rules Alpha Hospital must follow when managing their non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste. As a reminder, here are the wastes that Alpha Hospital generated in a month: 40 pounds of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, 70 pounds of spent solvent, 15 pounds of glutaraldehyde, and 10 pounds of paint waste. Since Alpha Hospital must manage their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under Section 555, they do not count dangerous waste pharmaceuticals towards their generator category. So they add the remainder of the waste generated in a calendar month to get 95 pounds of other dangerous waste. From the generator category table in slide 21, Alpha Hospital is an SQG, or small quantity generator, because they generated less than 220 pounds of dangerous waste that month. Alpha Hospital must manage their non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste under the SQG requirements in WAC 173-303 170. Let's review. We went over the definition of a healthcare facility and that you must meet the definition for Section 555 to apply. We covered that a healthcare facility must designate their waste and count their waste. When counting, they must include RCRA hazardous waste pharmaceuticals, state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, and non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste. A healthcare facility then must determine if 555 applies in order to know which requirements they must follow for managing their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. If 555 applies, a healthcare facility only counts non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste to determine their generator category. Their generator category determines which requirements they must follow for managing their non-pharmaceutical dangerous waste. We've covered a lot of information, so let's take a 5-minute break. Those that have questions can take some time to write into the Q&A. Please take a moment to stand up, get blood moving. After the break, we can answer a few questions and then we'll move on to management requirements in 555. We're at 10:34 right now, so why don't we come back at 10:40?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Jenny Yu again. Before we move on to Eric's part of the presentation, we did want to address a couple of quick questions. There was a question about universal waste and how that factors into the count towards generated category. And universal waste does not count towards a facility's generated category. That is a separate count. They're kind of separated and have their own section of the regulations, and you have to follow that for specifically for universal waste. There was a question about a couple clarifying things about nicotine. The exemption from the exclusion of the P075 listing is for the FDA approved nicotine replacement therapies. So the patches, gums, lozenges. If a hospital has prescription nicotine, that would still have the P075 waste code and obviously still be a dangerous waste pharmaceutical to be managed, eligible to be managed under Section 555. And the patches, if it's coming from a healthcare facility, the same would apply there, that it's, if you go under the empty containers, we'll come back to the patches later, sorry. And I think we'll cover the rest later during the general Q&A. Thanks.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, so we have covered who must manage their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under 555. Now we will discuss what wastes are required to be managed and how you should manage them. In this next section, I will talk about notification, reporting dangerous waste activities, types of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, and special on-site pharmaceutical waste management requirements. Healthcare facilities that are required to manage dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under 555 must obtain or update your EPA state ID number. To notify or report, go to Turbo Waste on Ecology's Hazardous Waste Reporting webpage. Follow the instructions on the form. But be sure to check the healthcare facilities checkbox in section 18 and complete the form. If you already have an EPA state ID number, you must update your notification to indicate that you are still a healthcare facility. Dangerous waste annual reporting is due by March 1st for the previous calendar year's dangerous waste generation. Healthcare facilities do not report dangerous waste pharmaceutical amounts in your annual report, but you are still required to report all other dangerous waste disposal and activities. So there's two types of waste pharmaceuticals: non-creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals and potentially creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. The first type of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals are called non-creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. They are defined as prescription pharmaceutical wastes that do not have a reasonable expectation to be eligible for manufacturer credit, to be legitimately used or reclaimed. Non-creditable pharmaceuticals can include investigational drugs, free samples of pharmaceuticals received by a healthcare facility, residue of pharmaceuticals remaining in empty containers, pharmaceutical contaminated PPE or personal protective equipment, floor sweepings, and cleanup materials from the spill of pharmaceuticals. Healthcare facilities must manage non-creditable dangerous waste pharmaceutical containers by keeping them closed and secured when not in use. They must be structurally sound and non-leaking, compatible with their contents, labeled or marked hazardous waste pharmaceuticals or dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. Non-creditable waste accumulation areas are not satellite accumulation areas. So healthcare facilities may accumulate non-creditable pharmaceuticals on site for up to 1 year. The containers must be labeled or marked with the date the contents first become waste. Or records can be used to document the waste has not been on site for more than 1 year. Non-creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals must be sent on manifest to a TSDF or transfer storage disposal facility. Here's an example of how a container label might look. We are using this as an example primarily because container labeling is a frequently cited violation during inspections, not only at healthcare facilities, but at all dangerous waste generators. Moving into empty containers, you must determine if pharmaceutical containers are empty to ensure proper disposal. Once empty, they often can be disposed of as solid waste. If they are not empty, they may designate as a dangerous waste pharmaceutical. For example, stock dispensing and unit dose delivery devices are empty when the doses have been delivered. They are now solid waste. They are not empty if they contain unused pharmaceuticals, and you must manage them as a dangerous waste pharmaceutical. Examples of these types of devices are epinephrine auto-injectors, powder inhalers, and patches. Blister packs are empty when all of the medications are removed or popped out of the blister pack. They are now considered solid waste. They are not empty when the medications remain in the blister packs. Manage these packs as dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, or empty the remaining pills into a dangerous waste pharmaceutical container and throw the empty blister packs away. Examples of blister packs are Benadryl, cold medications, prepackaged medications for long-term healthcare facilities, or what is sent to assisted living facilities. Syringes are considered empty when they are fully administered and the plunger is fully depressed. The syringe is now a solid waste and should be managed in a biomedical sharps container. Syringes are not empty if they are full or partially full of medications. They may be fully administered, but if the plunger is not fully depressed, then it is not considered empty. You can squirt the remaining contents into a dangerous waste pharmaceutical container, and the syringe is now considered empty. This applies to all syringes, regardless of content, including syringes that administered P-listed medications like epinephrine and warfarin. IV bags are empty when the IV bag has been completely administered to the patient. The IV bag can be disposed of as solid waste. They're not empty when the IV bag has dispensable medications inside. Manage the non-empty bags as dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. A term often used with dangerous waste management is RCRA empty, RCRA. This refers to standards of when a container is considered empty. In WAC 173.303.160 sub 2 defines a container or inner liner as empty when all wastes in the container have been removed using commonly employed practices to remove the material from that type of container. Also, no more than 1 inch of waste can remain at the bottom of the container, or no more than 3% by weight of the total capacity can remain in the container. For inhalers, managed as a pharmaceutical container under 555, they are not considered empty and must be managed as dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. If it's managed as an aerosol can under 160 sub 2, it is empty when the aerosol inhaler is at atmospheric pressure, same as a standard aerosol can, but it must also meet RCRA empty. It is not empty when there is still propellant and a pressure differential exists. For creams and ointments managed under 555, tubes are not empty and must be managed, and you must manage the tube as dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. Under empty containers in 160 sub 2, they are empty when the tube meets the RCRA empty conditions, except if the waste designates for acute hazardous waste or extremely hazardous waste. Disposal of non-creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals must happen at a RCRA permitted treatment, storage, and disposal facility. The waste must ship on a uniform hazardous waste manifest. The waste codes are replaced with PHRM on line item 813. Dangerous waste containers must be transported by a licensed hazardous waste transporter. Additionally, true small quantity generators, or true SQGs, can consolidate dangerous waste pharmaceuticals at another healthcare facility if certain criteria is met. A true SQG healthcare facility is one that generates less than 220 pounds of dangerous waste and less than 2.2 pounds of acute hazardous or extremely hazardous waste prior to deducting their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. We will discuss true SQGs and consolidation in more detail later. Waste controlled substances are exempted as dangerous waste when specific conditions are met by a healthcare facility. The sewer prohibition applies to all dangerous waste controlled substances, including sewering of partially administered doses. To meet the exemption, healthcare facilities must follow the DEA's regulations for collection, storage, and transport of the waste controlled substances. Controlled substances must be destroyed at one of the 5 types of incinerators listed in 555, paragraph 7. To increase safety and security around partially administered controlled substances, facilities may use commercially marketed sequestration containers or devices. Healthcare facilities must segregate them if they are only holding conditionally exempted controlled substance waste. These containers must be incinerated and you must have disposal records. If the system holds any dangerous waste pharmaceuticals other than controlled substances, then the conditional exclusion no longer applies, and all of the contents of are non-creditable dangerous waste. Ecology does not endorse a particular sequestration system. Examples of marketed irretrievable wastes, pharmaceutical systems or containers would be a Cactus Smart Sink, CSRX, Drugbuster, or RX Destroyer. These are containers holding dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, and container requirements do apply. Some of the systems include adding solidifying agents or liquids, and it is important to note that this is not considered a treatment, even though some of these systems are marketed as can be thrown away in the trash. They cannot. As far as we are aware, DEA has not publicly deemed any of these devices as meeting their non-retrievable standard. So the device canister and the residues must be managed by incineration. The adoption of EPA's Subpart P and creation of Section 555 replaced the interim pharmaceutical waste policy. 555 paragraph 10 replaced the conditional exclusion as it applies now to healthcare facilities. 555.10 allows state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals to be sent to alternate incinerators. You can use the same incinerators as listed for destruction of controlled substances. You must have a signed approval from the local regulating authority that the receiving incinerator can accept state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. All other on-site management requirements for dangerous waste pharmaceuticals that are state-only are outlined in 555 must be met, such as accounting, on-site management, record retention, and if you are disposing of state-only waste pharmaceuticals at an alternate incinerator, then you must accumulate them separate from dangerous waste pharmaceuticals with federal waste codes. The second type of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals is called potentially creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. These are waste prescription pharmaceuticals that have a reasonable expectation to receive manufacturer credits. To qualify, they must be in their original packaging, undispensed, and unexpired or within 1 year of expiration. Management is by only sending potentially creditable pharmaceuticals to a reverse distributor or dispose of them as non-creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. Annual reporting is not required for potentially creditable pharmaceuticals, but healthcare facilities must keep shipping records for 5 years. For spills, manage cleanup materials as non-creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals that were evaluated by a reverse distributor as not receiving credits cannot continue to be sent to a reverse distributor. These must be managed as non-creditable dangerous waste. Remember, there must be a reasonable expectation to receive credit for the pharmaceutical to be able to continue to send it to the reverse distributor. Also, non-prescription, homeopathic, over-the-counter drugs and dietary supplements do not qualify as potentially creditable waste pharmaceuticals. Healthcare facilities must determine if the pharmaceutical is potentially creditable. Be sure you do not send other dangerous waste to your reverse distributor. Healthcare facilities operating under 555 may accept potentially creditable pharmaceuticals from an affiliated offsite, true SQG, to consolidate waste. Again, we will cover this in more detail later on. Before we go into healthcare facilities requirements when managing potentially creditable pharmaceuticals, it is important to talk about reverse distributors. Ecology and EPA define a reverse distributor as any person that receives and accumulates prescription pharmaceuticals that are potentially creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals for the purpose of facilitating manufacturer credit. Any person, including forward distributors, third-party logistics providers, and pharmaceutical manufacturers that process prescription pharmaceuticals for the facilitation and verification of manufacturer credit is considered a reverse distributor. Also, reverse distributors must meet specific regulations in Subpart P or 555. Before sending potentially creditable pharmaceuticals to a reverse distributor, you as a healthcare facility must verify your reverse distributor has an active EPA state ID number, and the reverse distributor should be operating under 555 RCRA's Subpart P or an equivalent out-of-state dangerous waste pharmaceutical regulation. Your reverse distributor may be in a state that has not yet adopted Subpart P and may not yet have an EPA ID number. Some states have not yet adopted this rule. It will be important to verify this in the near future to be sure you are sending your pharmaceuticals to an appropriate destination. We have included a link to EPA's list of states that have adopted the pharmaceutical waste rule in the resources section. A healthcare facility operating under Section 555 may receive waste from only true small quantity generators, healthcare facilities. Both the sending and receiving healthcare facility must be under the control of the same person or have a contractual or business relationship where the consolidating facility supplies pharmaceuticals to the client SQG healthcare facility. The receiving healthcare facility may consolidate both non-creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals and potentially creditable waste pharmaceuticals. Healthcare facilities must keep records for 5 years, including but not limited to waste determination results, shipping records such as manifests and other shipping records for state-only pharmaceutical waste, waste-controlled substances, also records for received pharmaceutical, records for received consolidated pharmaceuticals, reverse distributions shipment records, confirming the potential creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals were received within 35 days from the shipment date. We've covered applicability and examples and management requirements. At this point, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Again, if you have questions, go ahead and write them in the Q&A. And when we come back, we'll spend a few minutes answering some of those. Again, most of the questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Let's return back at 11:11. Thank you.
I'm going to again pause the recording at this time, and I will restart it for the presentation.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We did get a few more questions on this round. We're just going to hit a couple of them right now and then save the remainder for the larger Q&A at the end. And so I think we just had a blanket statement about over-the-counters not being sent to reverse distributors. And I think you guys can all see it, but Kristen Fitzgerald from EPA posted a couple of links. If you can't see it, we can post it in the chat as well. But we would concur with EPA, and for those instances where the over-the-counters can receive credit, we would allow that. And so the links that Kristen posted are to the frequently asked questions that EPA has posted for subpart P. And it looks like we're posting them in the chat right now. Thank you. There should be one more link as well. And so that website is actually a really good resource, and we'll get to a few more of those. There was a quick question about whether or not creditable pharmaceuticals are redistributed to markets, and typically no. Our understanding of how the reverse distribution works is they are taking potentially creditable dangerous wastes. They are still waste. And they're evaluating the waste pharmaceuticals to determine whether there is a financial credit available to the healthcare facility or if they are simply waste with no credit. And our understanding is that the reverse distributors manage all of the evaluated pharmaceutical waste as dangerous waste, or however their regulations require them, depending on where they're located. The pharmaceuticals that can be redistributed would still be considered product, and they would have to be not within a year. It depends on what the redistribution is and who's taking it back. As long as it's not expired, it's not waste-like, and it is actually going to a market. And we can answer more later. So with that, Eric, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thank you, Jenny. So we know this material is dense, but yeah, we tried to make it user-friendly here. So this will be our last section. We're going to focus on true SQGs generators, true small quantity generators, and how they can manage dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. Remember, a true SQG is a healthcare facility that is an SQG prior to deducting dangerous waste pharmaceuticals from their monthly generation amount. So in this section, we will discuss the two pharmaceutical dangerous waste management options for SQGs, examples of how to manage under each option, how to consolidate pharmaceutical wastes, and examples of consolidation. So subpart P was intended to better define pharmaceutical waste management for MQGs and LQGs. Full regulation may not be the best option for small quantity generators. There are some questions you may need to consider as we look at pharmaceutical management for SQGs. Is your facility able to maintain a true SQG category? If your monthly generation amounts fluctuate above the SQG limits, then perhaps opting into 555 is a better option. Are you part of a larger system with universal company policies? Do you want to send your pharmaceutical waste to an affiliated healthcare facility for consolidation? To explain the process and options for true SQGs, we'll go through an example with Gamma Clinic, just like we did earlier with other facilities. Gamma Clinic has already completed steps 1 and 2, designating and counting dangerous waste. This clinic generates the following dangerous wastes in a month: 115 pounds of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, 10 pounds of aerosol cans, 15 pounds of glutaraldehyde, and 70 pounds of cleaning waste or expired cleaning solutions. When looking at step 3 for applicability to manage under 555, they generate 1 pound of acute hazardous waste, 4 pounds of dangerous waste controlled substances, and 110 pounds of other dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. Gamma Clinic's total dangerous waste accumulation for this month is 1 pound of acute hazardous waste. And remember, this has a 2.2 pound QEL. And 209 pounds of other dangerous waste. Now Gamma Clinic knows they are not required to manage dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under 555. They are a true small quantity generator and have 2 management options. Facilities that are below SQG levels after counting all of their wastes are true SQGs. Gamma Clinic must choose one of the 2 options. So I will present all of the information for the 2 options for true SQGs. Every healthcare facility has different needs. You will have to make the best decision for your healthcare facility. Starting with option 1 for true SQGs is managing pharmaceutical dangerous waste under 555. This option is managing as a fully regulated healthcare facility. We detailed this information earlier. To summarize, you must send your dangerous waste pharmaceuticals to a permitted hazardous waste transfer, storage, and disposal facility, a reverse distributor. You can dispose of your controlled substances according to the conditional exemption, and you can send state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals to an alternate disposal facility. All other dangerous waste must be managed according to the small quantity generator regulations in WAC 173, 303, 170, and 171. SQG healthcare facilities that are managing under 555 are not allowed to send dangerous waste pharmaceuticals to an affiliated healthcare facility for consolidation. You can only receive them to consolidate as your own generated dangerous waste. This also requires them to be counted in your monthly determination and would influence your applicability to be required to manage under 555, which is not really a change if you have already opted in. Here's how Gamma Clinic would count their monthly dangerous waste under option 1. They generate the following in a month: 115 pounds of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, including 1 pound of acute hazardous waste, would not be counted toward their generator category, leaving 95 pounds of other dangerous waste in the month. Gamma Clinic has chosen to be fully regulated as a healthcare facility that is also a small quantity generator. So they can receive dangerous waste pharmaceuticals for consolidation and dispose of state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals at an alternate incinerator. Now we can look at option 2 for true SQGs managing pharmaceutical waste. This option allows SQGs to manage and dispose of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under the small quantity generator regulations found in 170 and 171. The pharmaceutical waste regulations still come into play for healthcare facilities managing under option 2 in 2 ways. No disposal of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals to the sewer, and how pharmaceutical containers and devices are considered to be empty containers. Under option 2, you are still allowed to use a reverse distributor for potentially creditable waste pharmaceuticals and a conditional exemption for controlled substances. Record-keeping rules do still apply. A true SQG is under option 2 can send both types of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals to an affiliated healthcare facility that is operating under 555 for consolidation. As another option, SQGs can consolidate to a large quantity generator that is under the control of the same person as described in FAC 173, 303, 1711, E, Roman numeral 9. If that healthcare facility is an LQG and has notified Ecology they are receiving dangerous waste for consolidation, the consolidated dangerous waste is not subject to full LQG requirements until it is shipped to the LQG facility. But option 2 does not allow for true SQGs to use state-only alternate disposal options under 55510. Let's look at Gamma Clinic's monthly dangerous waste count when managing under the SQG regulations. We're starting at step 4 since we're using the same facility and same waste totals. All of Gamma Clinic's dangerous waste is counted in the monthly accumulation. They have 1 pound of hazardous waste and 209 pounds of dangerous waste. They remain a true SQG. Note that in this month, Gamma Clinic can only generate 1.2 pounds more of acute hazardous waste or 11 more pounds of dangerous waste before they are required to manage as a fully regulated healthcare facility under 555. So SQG healthcare facilities in a similar situation near the upper generation limits should closely consider which option will best suit their pharmaceutical waste management. The last topic of the new regulation we need to discuss is consolidation of waste pharmaceuticals under 555. Omega Pharmacy supplies the pharmaceuticals for 3 facilities: Speedy Ambulance, the City Community College, and the county jail. Omega Pharmacy is a healthcare facility managing their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals under Section 555. They are a fully regulated healthcare facility. Omega's clients are true SQGs, managing their dangerous waste, including their pharmaceuticals, under the SQG requirements, or option 2. In this scenario, the pharmacy can take back waste pharmaceuticals from these clients because there is a contractual agreement for the medical distribution. Because Omega Pharmacy is operating under 555, they can accept both non-creditable dangerous waste pharmaceuticals and potentially creditable pharmaceuticals from these other facilities. The received dangerous waste pharmaceuticals must be consolidated and managed as Omega Pharmacy's generated dangerous waste. The SQG facilities cannot send their dangerous waste to each other prior to sending them to the Omega Pharmacy. This concludes our presentation on the special requirements for management of dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. So we will spend our remaining time answering questions. Talk about additional resources and contact information for Ecology's hazardous waste and toxic reduction staff or region. We will also be publishing this available on our website sometime in the near future. And that is what we have. Jenny, it's all yours.
Sorry, I had 3 phones going off at the same time. Okay, so we do have quite a few questions, and I'll try to go through them. Please do continue to add questions to the Q&A. While I start answering, I did have a question I wanted to respond back to Sharon Oakland. You had a question, and I need a little bit more clarification on what your question is answering. So let's begin. We had a couple questions early on. Let me go back about calculating the pounds of waste. And the question was, how are facilities calculating their pounds of waste? If a product is completely administered, it is no longer hazardous waste, so dispense counts are not accurate. Are hospitals required to total all partially administered hazardous waste medications? So if this is in regard to determining your applicability for whether or not Section 555 applies, if the pharmaceutical has been fully administered, fully dispensed out of either the vial, syringe, IV bag, pill bottle, those empty containers are now solid waste, and so those would not count towards the dangerous waste total. If you have partially administered medications, they would be counted towards your applicability, and depending on what your generator category is, your ultimate generator category, if you're below the true SQG thresholds. So, Paul, I'm not sure if I fully answered your question. If not, please respond back in the Q&A. AJ, you had a question about the nicotine patches. And once the nicotine patches have been used, they are a single-use device. You consider them used and solid waste. let's see. I answered the universal waste question online, but just in case people didn't see that, there was a question about whether or not universal waste, where that fits into the four-step process. And universal waste does not count towards a facilities generator category. So you don't count universal waste being managed as universal waste. And that's light bulbs, batteries, mercury containing equipment. We have not adopted the aerosol containers universal waste rule. So in Washington State, aerosol containers cannot be managed under universal waste. Okay. Let's see. There was a question about whether or not the potentially creditable pharmaceutical, dangerous waste pharmaceuticals sent to a reverse distributor count in the waste calculations. Yes, they do. So in that step 3, where you are determining the applicability of whether or not Section 555 is required, the potentially creditable are considered waste. And so your facility has to determine whether or not you've exceeded any of those thresholds to require you to manage those dangerous waste pharmaceuticals per regulations. And then if you are managing them according to Section 555, they would not count in section step 4 in determining your generator category. So let's see. There was a question about epinephrine, and epinephrine's a fun one. So in Washington State, we do consider epinephrine and the salts of epinephrine to carry the listing of P042 if it is a discarded product and it is the sole active ingredient. So we may be the only state that still sees the salts of epinephrine to be P listed. However, most of these medications would be eligible to be managed under Section 555 if your healthcare facility is large enough, or as a small quantity generator, you would have to determine whether or not you've exceeded the 2.2 pounds. While the P listing, we understand that the epinephrine is typically used in infusions at very dilute concentrations. The listing has no bearing on whether or not it's dilute or very or pure substance. It's just a question of whether it's there and whether it's a sole active ingredient and it has not been used for its intended purpose. We do not consider saline to be an active ingredient. So if you had an infusion that had, say, lidocaine and epinephrine, those have two distinct active ingredients, and so the P listing would not carry. However, both epinephrine and lidocaine, you would have to assess for their acute toxicity, and they may still likely be a Washington State only dangerous waste for toxicity. And just a quick note to the rest of the healthcare team whose names you see up here on the screen. If I missed something, please jump in. Let's see. There was just some clarification about the OTCs. If anybody has additional questions on that, I do recommend going to EPA's frequently asked questions. We have not revised our FAQs on our website yet. We are working on that, so we will be posting those to our website. So be sure to keep coming back to our website for more information. And let's see, getting caught up here a little bit. So there was a question about hazardous waste controlled substances, and whether or not they are conditionally exempted, and is that true for true SDGs? So if you are a true small quantity generator, meaning that counting all of your dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, you are below that 2.2 pound QEL for the acutely hazardous waste and the 220 pound QEL for all other dangerous waste. You, as a true SQG, if you choose to stay within the dangerous waste regulations and manage all of your waste under the SQG requirements in section 170 and 171, you still have the option to use the conditional exemption under subpart P to send the dangerous waste controlled substances to an alternate disposal location. So in addition to the 11 locations that a small quantity generator can potentially send their waste to, as listed out in section 171, the true SQG healthcare facility can also send their dangerous waste controlled substances to one of the incinerators listed in section 555, subcategory 7. I believe it's 7, sorry. But it does count towards the generated category. Okay, let's see. Got some more questions coming in. There was a question specifically about the aerosol container rule, and correct, we have not adopted that universal waste rule. So for now, aerosol cans or aerosol containers, like the inhalers, would need to either be managed under the pharmaceutical rule or as an aerosol can, and determine whether it designates under the standard rules or not. Okay, so there was a question about containers that held P-listed waste. And so the question is, if a syringe once held P-listed waste is now empty, it can be disposed of as a sharp, that's just a solid waste, that is correct. But the question is asking whether or not bags that held P-listed waste are now RCRA empty, and are now RCRA empty or still hazardous waste. James, I'm not sure if you're talking about IV bags, and if it is IV bags, if the IV bag that contained a P-listed pharmaceutical is fully dispensed, fully administered, then that bag and the tubing attached to it are considered solid waste. However, if that bag has not been fully administered, then the contents of that bag are still considered P-listed and would need to be managed as hazardous waste. In order for a container that held P-listed waste to become RCRA empty, it would need to have all the waste removed and be triple rinsed, and the rinsate collected and managed as P-listed waste. And that is not a practice we would want to see with pharmaceutical waste, or to have any of the healthcare facilities be tying up their hands working on creating a RCRA empty container, because now you've got a liquid waste to manage as a hazardous waste as well. So hopefully I answered that question for you, James. Okay, next question is about the applicability for a large quantity generator military installation, which has a medical clinic on site, and whether or not the clinic's pharmaceutical waste would need to be added to the annual report. No. So that large quantity generator military installation is above the threshold for the applicability of section 555. And so since they have a healthcare facility on site, that medical clinic is obligated to manage all of their pharmaceutical waste, dangerous waste pharmaceuticals, sorry, this is a tongue twister of a topic, under section 555. And part of Section 555 requirements indicate that you do not need to report that. So hopefully that is clear. You do, however, need to notify on your dangerous waste annual report on the site identification form that they are that you are managing your pharmaceuticals as a healthcare facility under Section 555. I believe it is line or Section 18 on the site ID form. A container management question. If you have a waste container that has hazardous waste and another waste container that has state-only dangerous waste, they are all required to be closed when you are not actively placing waste into the container. The management for the state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals for on-site management are exactly the same. They have to have the same labeling, meet all the same requirements. The only difference is that those state-only dangerous waste pharmaceuticals have the option of being sent to an alternate incinerator than a RCRA permitted incinerator. You can send them to a large municipal combustor, a small municipal combustor, a RCRA permitted facility, a medical waste, a permitted medical waste incinerator, or a permitted industrial waste combustor. Get the actual terminology on that one, but it's all in the regulations. And again, let me know if I did not answer that question. Okay, so let's see. So there is a question about how a DEA reverse distributor for a large quantity generator fits within the Section 555 waste management. So the term reverse distributor is actually from DEA. So a DEA reverse distributor is typically only managing the controlled substances. And I believe we actually still have one in Washington State that primarily operates as a DEA reverse distributor. They may or may not be managing as a reverse distributor that meets Section 555 definition of a reverse distributor or Subpart P's definition of a reverse distributor. So you'd have to make sure that they are following Section 555 or Subpart P or an equivalent, depending on where they're located, before you send potentially creditable to them under 555. If the DEA reverse distributor is not necessarily operating under Section 555 as a reverse distributor as defined in Subpart P, they may be considered a waste vendor from our perspective that is helping you manage your conditionally exempt controlled substances at an alternate incinerator. But you would have to make sure that you are not commingling any other dangerous waste pharmaceuticals into that controlled substances container. And this is a pretty complicated topic to wrap your head around. So please let me know if you have, if I answered your question, or if Amy, if you have additional questions on that. The next question is state-only dangerous waste that doesn't have to go to a TSDF. For the authorization required from the end facility, would a copy of the facility's permit cover? Yes. So I believe the healthcare facility just needs to have on hand a copy of the permit that says that they can accept the materials. So as long as that permit cover letter includes that information, that should suffice, but we need to see that they can accept the state only dangerous waste or the pharmaceuticals. Hang on a second. And it must be an incinerator for pharmaceuticals is the permitting language, not just solid waste. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to tackle a couple of questions that came in through the chat. So apparently Connecticut also considers salts of epinephrine to be P-listed waste. So Washington and Connecticut, if you're located in one of those two states, you are special. So, and it is true that there are some optical procedures where we have stated that the epinephrine saline solution there is considered a mixture. And that is a very unique situation where the case was made that the eye surgery needed to be done in a saline environment and it could be done without the epinephrine. However, the epinephrine added a benefit and so was added more recently. So yes, if you have an optical surgical center and you are using an infusion of saline and epinephrine to do that particular, I forget exactly which procedure it was, that is still considered a mixture and the P listing does not hold. However, I believe that concentration of epinephrine still designated under our state criteria for toxicity. So if it was a partially administered IV bag, it may still be considered a dangerous waste. Let's see. Another question from the chat. Oops, sorry, missed it. About consolidation from true SQGs to okay. Sorry. So the question is, so only true SQGs can ship their dangerous waste pharmaceuticals to a large quantity generator under the same control. If a small quantity generator has 3 pounds of unused EpiPens, so they are not a true SQG, then they cannot ship to the large quantity generator. So the consolidation, there are only 2 ways of consolidating the dangerous waste pharmaceuticals. One is under Section 555, and one is under the regulations of an SQG to an LQG. And in both situations, the facility sending the waste must be a true SQG, not opting in to manage their pharmaceutical waste under Section 555. So if they exceeded the 2.2 pound QEL with the unused EpiPens, then that is correct. They cannot ship to that LQG. Let's see, going back online, there is a, oh, sorry, looks like there was a clarification on the P listing, that EPA does not require or allow the triple rinsing of a container with P listed waste to be considered rigor empty. So if that container is not considered empty under Section 555, subsection 8, then you would need to manage it as a dangerous waste pharmaceutical. Thanks. Okay, so this question, would a large quantity of cigarettes, say several tons, seized at the port, be considered dangerous waste in need of shipment to a designated TSDF instead of a regional landfill? Tom, I might defer this one to you. And I'll go on to another question if you want to So I'll give you a chance to take a look at that. Let me send this question to you as well.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, okay, so let's see. So you have, excuse me. So you have a ton of solid waste, basically. And you got to figure out if it's a dangerous waste. So, I mean, that's the question. You have to designate it. We don't have any test data on cigarettes, unfortunately. Are you asking if they would be P-listed because of the nicotine? You know, it's a good question. I'd have to look into that for you. But
I would imagine that if the cigarettes are considered to have nicotine as the sole active ingredient, then yes.
yeah,
I remember the question a long time ago when we first started dealing with this, pharmaceuticals. The question was, were mentholated cigarettes considered to have nicotine as a sole active ingredient? Because menthol, it was a question whether that was a flavoring or an active ingredient. But I thought we landed on regular cigarettes would be P listed.
right, it would. Correct.
Probably not the answer you're looking for. But the advantage of, but the port would not be considered a healthcare facility unless you had a medical clinic on site.
Well, you know, the cigarettes aren't really being generated by, you know, even if the port had a clinic.
Mm-hmm. It's not.
Yeah,
It's not the clinic's waste.
It's not really the clinic's waste. I mean, the job of the port is to, you know, take cargo on board, you know, on site, and so it's probably just another solid waste they run into that they have to designate.
Yeah. So if you have additional questions on that, feel free to contact us and we can talk about that offline.
That's a good one.
Yeah. This is a really complicated topic, and the more I dig into it, the more questions come up. So even though I've been working on pharmaceutical waste management for definitely over 15 years, there's always new questions that stump me all the time. So this is a complicated topic. So there's another question about consolidation, and when consolidating pharmaceutical waste from a small quantity generator to the main healthcare facility, does it matter if the transportation involves bringing a material from another state into the state of Washington? That would be allowable as long as both states are operating under subpart P or the equivalent in their state. If you're managing under the true SQG to a healthcare facility managing under subpart P consolidation. If you are talking about the true SQG to a large quantity generator under the same owner, under the same person, that is part of the generator improvement rules, and each state would have to have adopted those generator improvement rules before you could do that consolidation across state lines. And then, oops, sorry. Let's see, next question. So the disposal of syringes and IV bags which held arsenic trioxide or partial doses. With the arsenic trioxide, that is considered a P-listed waste. And so again, if that syringe has been fully administered, the plunger is fully depressed, that syringe is a solid waste. So if it had a needle attached to it, placed in the sharps container. With the IV bag, if it has been fully administered, again, solid waste. If it has a partial dose, it would still carry the P listing, so you would have to manage it as a dangerous waste pharmaceutical. And in terms of segregation of the heavy metals, that is something that you're going to have to work closely with your hazardous waste vendor, because depending on where it's going, it may need to be segregated out for shipment and disposal. I believe there are some special labeling requirements surrounding the heavy metals. So. Let's see. Oh, yep, clarification. If the heavy metals are in a lab pack, then they need to have the special regulations. So there's a question about container labeling. When the pharmaceutical waste container is full and awaiting pickup, is the container required to have hazard class labeling like flammable or toxic? If the pharmaceuticals are being managed under Section 555, the hazard class labeling is not required. The only labeling requirements are the words dangerous waste pharmaceuticals or hazardous waste pharmaceuticals, and accumulation start date or some other, unless you have another way of denoting how long the waste has been accumulating on site. This does not supersede any DOT regulations. So once it is picked up, if a hazard class labeling is required, then you would need to affix that for shipment. So I think that was most of the questions. Did I miss any questions? Just going through to see if I mixed anything. You've got our contact information, so I fully expect at least a few of you to email to clarify. We will be posting this online again as soon as we can render that video, and we'll also have the presentation along with our notes available for you to download as well. So I think that may be about it for the questions. I'm sorry if I missed yours. So.
Also, we do have the Q&A available. It will be transcribed into a separate document. So if we did happen to miss any questions, we can always come back around to them in email form.
Thank you all for joining us today. And if you want a repeat, we'll be doing this again on Thursday afternoon. And if you have any other colleagues that weren't able to make it today, the presentation on Thursday afternoon will be the same. However, we did kind of try to aim that for the smaller facilities with the thought that the Q&A might have some slightly different focus. But anybody is welcome. Thank you.